I'm going to show you two pictures and I want to see if you can tell me the difference. Here's the first picture. German sea captain faces 20 years in jail for migrant sea rescue efforts. She tried to save 1,000 migrants who otherwise would have drowned in the Mediterranean Sea, and as a result for her crime, she's facing 20 years in jail. Now here is the second picture. Missing Titanic sub-search team expands their efforts to find these missing billionaires. Did you notice the difference? 20 years in jail to save 1,000 refugees who were forced to put their lives at risk, but expanded efforts for a few billionaires who chose to put their lives at risk. Now, obviously, I hope the billionaires get home safe and sound as well, because I truly believe in the value of every human life. But here's my point. This criminalizing of poverty and this excusing of opulence should remind us that we don't suffer from a lack of resources to help those in need. We suffer from the inability to satisfy billionaire greed.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for joining me here for Conversations with Taz for Freeform Friday. No more introductions. Let's get into a more detailed look at the shipwreck that involved hundreds of migrants.
Disaster off the Greek coast is the worst tragedy ever in the Mediterranean Sea. Ylva Johansson said European nations must find ways to fight smugglers who are sending people to their deaths. Her comments come as the search continues for the missing. 78 people are confirmed dead, but up to 750 people were on the vessel when it sank on Wednesday, and hundreds are feared dead. Greek authorities are denying claims that the ship capsized after the Coast Guard tried to tow it to shore, and as survivors grapple with the disaster. 71 of them were taken to a registration and identification facility near Athens on Friday. Joining us now is award-winning journalist Sally Hayden. She's also the author of My Fourth Time We Drowned, Seeking Refuge on the World's Deadliest Migration Route. Sally, welcome. You have spent the last 5 years reporting on the impact of European Union migration policy. What did your investigation reveal?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. Yeah, this has been what I've been reporting on. And actually, to be honest, I had to double check the figures again and again today just to, make sure that I was appreciating the horrific scale of the deaths that are happening. More than 27,000 people have died in the Mediterranean Sea since 2014. And I think that the European position on this is often framed as inaction. People think it's just that they're not sending out boats to rescue people, but actually there is action happening to try and harden those borders, and that's creating a situation where people are much more unsafe. I know that you just quoted the EU talking about the importance of fighting people smugglers, but actually, we're living in a situation where a large proportion of the world's population don't have the ability to travel safely and legally, and so they must resort to using smugglers. The smuggling industry is always going to exist as long as people don't have safe and legal routes. At the moment, they can't get visas, they can't get on planes, they don't have other ways to make these journeys.
Now, this is one of the world's deadliest migration routes for all the reasons that you just outlined, and yet people remain determined to try and reach Europe through these dangerous routes across the sea. Why?
Because they're desperate. I mean, they're fleeing wars, dictatorships, situations, of extreme poverty. And I think, we talk about economic migrants, but fleeing poverty can also be, the fact that you don't have access to healthcare, that you can't feed your family, that there's an active risk to your life in that situation. And yeah, I think it really shows the desperation of people that, I talk to a lot of people who make these journeys and they say they know the risks. There might be this misconception that they don't know the risks, but they do, but they just have no other option. They feel like they're in a situation otherwise that they can't survive in. And yeah, my reporting has taken me across Africa and across the Middle East as well. And yeah, it's really, devastating to hear the stories and to hear the lengths that people are being pushed to.
Now, there's a lot of focus right now on the Greek Coast Guard, what they did and didn't do. What is the track record of Greek authorities when it comes to handling of the crisis in the Mediterranean?
Yeah, the Greek Coast Guard is becoming quite infamous for their brutality, for using violence against people, for even, disabling engines, leaving people at sea. And so we don't know exactly what happened with this boat yet. I know that there are conflicting reports, but one of the reports said that potentially the people on board, when they found out it was Greek authorities, had said no, they wanted to continue to Italy. They had refused help. And I mean, I can see why that might have happened because of the reputation of the Greek authorities, that actually people would think it was more dangerous to agree to, be technically helped by them. That actually the results might be more dangerous than the situation they were in even.
Now, Sally, as the weather gets warmer, do we expect more boats to keep coming? And what ultimately determines who deserves to be in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. Yeah, I think boats are going to continue to come all the time, and who deserves to be there? A lot of the people that I speak to, once they can get on European territory, they can claim a right to stay there. They can claim international protection, but the problem is that they can't claim that from abroad. They have to get onto European territory, then they'll be recognized as refugees. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of maybe a broader debate, but at the moment, without those safe and legal routes, this is the only recourse that people have to do that.
Sally Hayden, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
But people are so worried about the lack of empathy for a collection of billionaires who knowingly put themselves in danger, and the international effort that ignored hundreds of people in the water to go find billionaires that set themselves up for failure. Yet another reason that colonization and capitalism suck. But do you all remember the two Black men who were arrested at a Starbucks? They were meeting at the Starbucks to discuss their business plan. Then subsequently, the very racist manager was fired. Well, here's an update. You're not going to like this.
I was just thinking about something, and tell me if this makes sense to you, because it doesn't make a lick of sense to me. When police murdered Michael Brown, his family got a $1.5 million settlement. When police murdered Philando Castile, his family got a $3 million settlement. When police murdered Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, and Freddie Gray, their families got a $6 million settlement. When police murdered Breonna Taylor, her family got a $12 million settlement. When police murdered Laquan McDonald, his family got a $16 million settlement. And you can look up all the data out there. There are many more such murders where the settlement was far less than these numbers that I'm sharing. Meanwhile, $26 million for the white woman fired from Starbucks after the store called the cops on two Black men. Yeah, you heard that correctly. She got $26 million for being fired. And I'm not even talking about the merits of the case. That's a whole separate conversation. The question I have is this: why are Black lives worth less than white feelings?
Because white women are the default damsel in distress, and it just takes a little bit of white tears. Because they believe that even when they're wrong, they're right. And she didn't want to suffer the consequences of her actions. Now, keep in mind, I respect everyone and how they make their money to survive. But she was a manager at Starbucks. She didn't lose a loved one. She didn't lose a limb. She just said, because all this came out, she was viewed as a liability to other companies. There's no deterrent. There's no deterrent. They can treat us as subhuman. And just like the end of chattel slavery within the United States, they get the reparations. Hmm. But this is why. Take a look at the quiet part being screamed out loud yet again.
Juneteenth is, excuse me, what's happening to the white people? They have a Black Miss America. They have a Black college. They have a Black month. What do we have? And now they have Juneteenth. Yes, I understand there was slavery, don't get me wrong. But there was also a Holocaust, and that was more recent than slavery. But you don't hear the Jews saying, gimme, 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 gimme. What's the point of Juneteenth? What is it? I don't know.
She doesn't know because white people aren't centered in it. But let's break down a few things. There is no such thing as an all-Black college. There are historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs. A Black month, Black History Month, that started off as a week and didn't become a federal holiday until the 1980s. I'm older than it being a federal holiday. I'm sorry, that was Martin Luther King Jr. Day. My apologies, but Black History Month. And most teachers, most educators only teach you about Malcolm X, Dr. King, Rosa Parks, and maybe a little Harriet Tubman. And even that is extremely whitewashed. Extremely. And then the Miss Black America, which the first one was crowned in 1968 as compared to Miss America. The reason why Miss Black America had to be created, because it wasn't like you were opening up the doors to us, began in 1921. And then you're talking about the Holocaust and that Jewish people aren't complaining. Jewish people receive reparations, and to this day, because not too long ago we covered it here on this podcast, where there was a secretary of a war criminal who was brought in and indicted and went to trial and was convicted. Jewish people aren't told to forget their past. Countries have paid their debt to Jewish people. And Black people aren't here saying, gimme, 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 gimme. We're saying equal the playing field, since you built this economy off of our blood, sweat, tears, and free labor. And then you decide to denigrate us and keep us squadron off and give us minuscule scraps so that billionaires like the ones that imploded yesterday can do dumb shit. And you can walk around and pretend to be a broke billionaire yourself. Now, this next story, yes, I put the trigger warning up here. It does have to deal with animal torture and sexual assault. So if you need to step away, step away. The video is 2 minutes and 50 seconds. So take 3 minutes and step away, starting in 5, 4, 3, 2.
This guy made baby monkey torture porn for a living. And if that sentence isn't enough of a trigger warning for you, then, well, trigger warning.
He was a member of one of America's most feared biker gangs and has served jail time.
Basically, during the pandemic, obviously, everybody had time on their hands. I came across a random video of a monkey being teased with a baby bottle. And that was Minnie. I don't look at myself as a sick or demented person, but I couldn't pull out of it.
In fact, he started his own Telegram group and began dealing in monkey torture videos.
So what these Southerners would do is they would create group chats on Telegram and then poll how they wanted to see a baby monkey get killed. So there'd be some really graphic options, like put them in a blender, or use a hammer on their fingers one by one, or like squish their heads with a C-clamp. It was just it was just really graphic.
And at the heart of it is Minnie.
Minnie was so popular in this hatred world, so to speak.
The font's probably too small for you to read, but like these group chats are hyper personal. And what I mean by that is like the people paying for these videos, they enjoy the whole process of like picking out their victim and getting to know them, and then like ultimately watching them like die. It's like, it's really disturbing.
The individuals in these groups are getting to be their authentic selves. They're able to just express anything that comes to mind without worrying about being judged by others that don't understand. They are very patient. They want just the right baby monkey, and they want just the right setup for the torture. And if it's not right, then they'll wait. They are so sexually aroused by the idea of this perfect video that they're going to get.
By the end of this investigation, they'd uncovered thousands of videos that had been distributed to tens of thousands of people across the world in places like the UK, France, Australia, and yes, the good old fucking US of A. But the difference between our country and the rest of the world, because we're always fucking number one at the worst shit, is that we seem to have all the ringleaders with the most sadist minds.
We found out the person responsible for the most depraved, the most extreme, blatantly sexually exploitative content is a woman called Sadistic Mind.
15 seconds to guess where she's from.
Sadistic Mind had found her own person in Indonesia, willing to make extremely brutal videos.
She is into the sexual, sadistic torture of these monkeys. She is very violent, and she's very proud of that.
Every video she makes, it gets worse and worse and worse.
If your first guess was Alabama, then you're probably not even surprised by anything in this video.
I wanted to have a chat with you about your online activity.
Online activity?
Yeah, the monkey communities that you're involved in.
I'm not involved in anymore. I left those a long time ago.
Can we talk about...
But we're the violent savages. Black, brown, indigenous people of color, excuse me, are the savage, dangerous, violent ones. Okay. Sure. Let's mix things up a little bit. It is Freeform Friday, so let's get into this Am I the Asshole? Reading from Reddit.
Am I the asshole for canceling my plans with my girlfriend because she got upset with me over a joke?
Ooh. Well, it was just a joke, so.
That's literally his entire defense.
That's called it. So smart.
My girlfriend and I had plans to pick strawberries this morning. I wanted to show her a movie last night, and there was a scene that I knew she wouldn't find funny, and I thought about skipping it, but decided to show her anyways.
Okay.
I told her if she didn't like the movie, she could say so, and we would watch something else. Some context, my girlfriend is a black woman, and I myself am mixed, half black, half white.
Okay, alright.
There was a scene where Serena Williams was played by a man and being overly aggressive to a white woman. I laughed because I thought it was hilarious, and she did not. She made a comment that they didn't have to portray Serena as a man, and I told her to lighten up because it was just a joke. She started to tell me that it wasn't a joke for her and explain why she didn't find it funny, but I just cut her off because it wasn't that serious to me. She told me that she felt it was an overused joke and that it had implications for her life, but I believe in the freedom of jokes, and anything can be a joke if it's set up right. She asked me to change the movie, and I told her she was being lame over a joke.
You offered, though, to fucking say that you changed the movie.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, guess what, fuckface? You gotta fucking respect You made the rule. Fucking follow it.
Dude, and that's even by Reddit standards, and everyone's mad at him. And you know they wouldn't be if he didn't initially say that. They'd be like, well, whatever, she's taking a joke wrong.
Broad can't take a joke.
But because there's a boundary, and he crossed it, now it's a bad.
Now Reddit's like, yeah, you know, that sucks too. It should have just switched it anyway.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it sucks that Reddit was like, well, actually, you did say
That's
to do it.
That's not the real issue here.
That's not the real issue here, no. But your issue is you don't respect your girlfriend.
Every group of people have different jokes about them, and I see this as no different. I turned around and told her I wanted to leave and not come back because I'm not sure if I can be with someone who can't take a joke.
Too challenging for you.
Too challenging for you?
James A. Caster, ladies and gentlemen. God, Christ almighty.
When
you think you're fucking Ricky Gervais, not even like a good comedian.
What a little coward.
Yeah, what a little coward. Like, leave and never come back.
One conflict. One tiny conflict.
And you're like, get the fuck out of my house.
And you knew it was going to happen.
And you also
and you did
it
like, anyway.
Yeah, and you were like, well, you know, let's play it by ear.
She got upset with me and started going on about stereotypes and how she's had her womanhood questioned because she was black. That sucks. I told her black women weren't the only people who had stereotypes against them, and that I'm not going to change what I think is funny because she can't take a joke. I started to ignore her and go to sleep.
Yap, and sleep into it, you know what I mean? God, what a dick.
Yeah, what a piece of shit. Before I went to sleep, she asked if I wouldn't leave in the morning. I told her I wouldn't just so she would leave me alone. We woke up this morning and she didn't mention anything. She tried to kiss me and say good morning, but I was still upset. I can't understand why she made such a big deal. I started to pack up my stuff to leave and told her I didn't want to be around her right now and that we couldn't pick strawberries today.
Oh my God.
She told me she wanted to move past it and just go about the day as normal, but I told her it was her fault because she couldn't take a joke.
But you were the one that tried to go past it in the first fucking place.
Exactly.
Wait.
Yeah.
And now she's like,
because she didn't give him the reaction that he wanted. Now he's
wow, what a little baby.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
She got upset again and said that I was making the decision to not move on from it and said I was being an asshole because I wouldn't let it go. Correct? Yeah. I feel like she's trying to change me in what I think is funny, and I'm not going to stand for it.
This broad is trying to make me a better person. How dare she? Absolute C word.
Yeah. So I am asking, am I the asshole for canceling my plans on her because she got upset over a harmless joke?
She got what?
And am I the asshole for finding the joke funny?
This story is a perfect example of what we mean in the Black community when we say, when looking at biracial and multiracial children, when we say we can tell that they were raised by a white mother. Because all of the arguments, if you heard, are the same thing. Every woman goes to every woman, everywhere. We're every woman. Till it's time to get some rights installed onto us. Until it's time to move up the corporate ladder. Until it's time to do the labor. And it's just humor. It's okay because you're not consistently the butt of the joke. You're not consistently being hurled at racial tropes. And although, no, we don't have pictures of him, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he is very, very fair-skinned. So he's envisioning himself as being a white man and having that proximity to privilege. So now he's hurt because although he knew what he was doing, he knew he was picking a fight. He just wanted to see if she was going to master down to him. He wanted to see if she was going to master down to him. And now he's so hurt and so discouraged because this Black woman is going to stand up for respect. Instead of just allowing herself and women who look like her to be the consistent, racially motivated, racial trope joke. Now, as yet another member of the GOP has thrown their hat into the ring for the 2024 presidential race, have you ever wondered what GOP voters are actually looking for in a candidate? You may be surprised or you may not. You might be a little shocked or you may not. Take a look.
So if you're a Republican, I think early on in this video, your instinct is going to be to move on and not watch it. I would challenge you to stick around because I'm going to talk about some things that I think genuinely affect you. CBS News hosted a poll and they asked Republican voters, what is it that you want out of a presidential candidate for 2024? What are the most important issues that you want addressed by that candidate? And here are the results. 85%, the number one most important issue to Republican voters in a candidate for 2024 is someone who challenges woke ideas. The last couple elections, the big boogeyman was socialism. Only somehow Biden didn't turn the whole country socialist. But now the bad guy is woke ideas. So 85% of you are like, has to battle woke ideas. Number two, 66%, someone who opposes any gun restrictions. Background checks, mental health, all of it. That's the second most important thing. 61% in third place. 61% of people polled said the most important thing to them is a candidate who says Donald Trump won in 2020. Just says, oh yeah, I believe he won. That's important to them. And last but not least, 57% of people polled said they just want a candidate who makes liberals angry. Are y'all okay? You guys not need anything? Are you just flourishing? You're happy with gas prices and the cost of food and taxes and cost of living. You're fine with all of that because this is the only things that matter to you? Meanwhile, do you know what matters to the politicians that you've put in office? I ask because the Republican Study Committee, that's 175 Republican House members, they make up between 70 and 75% of the caucus. They released the 2023 blueprint of what their priorities are or what matters to them. And it went like this.
First, it raises the age for Social Security benefits from 67 to 69. That's a cut, folks. Something Republicans promised they would never do. The Republican plan would privatize Medicare. It also repeals Medicare's new power to negotiate drug prices, stop rapid drug price increases, and cap the price of insulin. This budget also slashes funding for the ACA and Medicaid. This would strip healthcare from tens of millions of Americans. But it would also end critical protections for people with pre-existing health conditions. The budget also includes every anti-abortion provision you can think of, calls for an end to funding for the radical green agenda. In fact, everything that keeps our air and water clean is cut. Here's where it gets really rich. This budget plan proposes a $5.1 trillion tax cut over the next 10 years. And this will surprise exactly no one, but those tax cuts are geared towards the rich and corporations. Because remember, for Republicans, if you don't own a private jet, you're basic. The budget blueprint closes with these words. The key to growth and flourishing communities is freedom from the burdens of government. But what Republicans really want to be free of, what they find burdensome, is us, the very citizens they're supposed to serve.
So slash retirement, slash Medicaid, slash protections that keep big pharmaceutical companies from jacking up the prices. Give tax breaks to the top 1% and corporations. That's not you. But they were like, hey, look over here, and convinced y'all these are your priorities. This is what's important. Meanwhile, the politicians are like, these are our priorities. This is what's important. They fed you propaganda. And now, y'all are slugs advocating on behalf of salt.
And if you think they're not serious about it, what do you think they're currently kicking around on Capitol Hill? If you didn't guess, trying to expunge Trump's impeachment, you'd be incorrect.
Today, there's a talk among Republicans about expunging Donald Trump's impeachments. What can you tell us about that, and what has Kevin McCarthy said about it?
Yeah, this is interesting. This is an idea that came from at least Stefanik. It's been embraced by some of the kind of more MAGA members of the Republican conference, including Marjorie Taylor Greene. The idea would be basically passing a resolution to, they say, expunge these two impeachments of Donald Trump. Through some great research by our in-house historian, Kyle Stewart, our view on this on the NBC Hill team is that this isn't really a thing. It's the idea here is basically a non-binding resolution saying this thing that happened didn't happen. And you can't functionally remove an impeachment that was voted on, that went to a trial, that was done.
Yeah, like we know he's guilty of all these things, and we know we should have removed him from office, and we didn't. But since the people still want to vote for him, we think so far, because he's not behind bars, let's just remove this. And we'll seem like the saviors to all these people. And then just in case he doesn't get the nomination or he does end up clink, clink, one of us will look really good stepping into power, because ultimately that's what we want. But through all of that, we're supposed to cry for billionaires. Everybody's human, right? You all have all of these think pieces. Because the rich died. But when it's your neighbor or the person who happens to be houseless, no think pieces, just looking into to see if they have a criminal background. Pish posh. And as always, make sure you check out the links in the description of this video. Now, I know you haven't seen her in a while. You haven't seen her on social media. You haven't seen a picture of her. Last thing we know is that she was getting her hair done at one of the indictments, one of them, of Trump. But Melania may not be as squeaky clean. because let us not forget, Trump does not, he doesn't use his own devices. So he may have weaved her into this web. That's probably why she hasn't divorced him yet.
You want to know what's really hysterical? Melania thought that she was just going to skate off after her shitbag husband went to jail and live her best life. But not if Letitia James has anything to say about it, because the Attorney General of the state of New York has now subpoenaed Melania's email in regards to the Trump Organization fraud case. Oh yes, honey. They want her emails. They want to look through what she knew and when she knew it, because apparently Melania was not as innocent as everybody tries to play off. Now listen, I know a girl has to do what she has to do for some old balls to get some money sometimes, honey, I get it. But sometimes those actions have repercussions. I mean, I don't feel bad for her. After that whole I don't care jacket, she can eat a whole bag of dicks. But I just find it absolutely hysterical that now she has to turn over her emails. But we also know from previous reporting, Donald Trump doesn't quote unquote use email, right? He doesn't use his own. He doesn't have his own. But what we do know from the filings in the indictment regarding the documents is that Donald Trump uses other people's phones quite often. So it almost makes me think that Melania was letting Don use her phone and her email, and they're coming for her now, and I'm living for it. Anyways, thoughts and prayers, Melanie, or whatever the fuck your name is.
Now, also, word on the street is that Ivanka's getting all up in her feelings because she may not be the number one child for much longer. Because, like I said, word on the street, just a little scuttlebutt. Tiffany Trump is showing up to all these court appearances to back her father. Now, do I see Tiffany Trump, who is an attorney, joining the legal team? Hell no. She knows what's going on. But she also knows that eventually the money has to be divvied up. And the way this family has been housed, because I can't say that they were raised, they were housed. It's a dog eat dog world. Also, from the bottom of my heart, I really, really, truly hope that at this point, Barron Trump, the youngest of them, and the grandchildren are being homeschooled by professional tutors. They have the money for it, at least the money that they made while they were in the White House. Because I can't imagine the teasing and the power plays that are trying to be made through these schools. Like, oh, I know a judge that could get your granddaddy off or get your dad off and da-da-da. I really, really, really hope that they're being homeschooled and they're not suffering because of this. Especially Donnie Jr.'s children that he dresses as if they're fresh out 8 Mile. But it's not looking too good for old Donnie boy. Because the fake electors, they're getting immunity.
Oh, he's gonna have a fucking meltdown. Oh, they're gonna eat each other alive! This fake elector scheme goes all the way up to the Supreme Court and Ginny Thomas. We're talking Sporkfoot, McKee's Beast, Lauren Boobafett, Bobblehead, whatever. John Eastman is about to be disbarred over this shit, and they're trading immunity. I do love this for you, Trump, and everybody else involved, because it's not just Trump. Oh, Jim Jordan and everybody are gonna, James Cohen, they're gonna lose their mind! Oh, I'm here for it. Somebody pass me some snacks, please.
Before I get ready to go for dinner, breaking news. Apparently, Jack Smith is out there handing out immunity deals to the fake electors that were part of the fake elector scheme for January 6th. Don't believe me, just watch. The recent testimony from the fraudulent electors, they're not targets. They were offered limited immunity in exchange for their testimony. You guys remember last week, right, when we saw 2 fake electors from the state of Nevada walking into a DC courtroom where there's a grand jury currently convened regarding the January 6th insurrection and the fake elector scheme. So it seems to me Jack Smith is giving out deals so that he can get the tea. Usually how prosecutors work, though, it's very standard practice. So whoever was involved in that fake elector scheme Uh-oh, Spaghetti-O. Y'all are probably going to jail because now they got the people that you got to help you commit the crime. They're talking. They're talking just like Mark Meadows is talking.
Now do you see why they will not give up on the big election lie? Now do you see why they lie in our faces and try to gaslight us so hard about who was really behind January 6th? They needed that coup, that self-coup of Trump's, that insurrection to be successful. And the moment that it wasn't, and the moment that some of them realized that they would be casualties, because they thought that they had a big boy seat at the table, and really they were in a high chair and a booster seat on the outskirts of the table because all their hands are in it. And now they have to scramble to save face because they're going to eat their own. But let's take a pause for the cause, and then we'll get updated on the latest on Oceangate and this Russian coup that has started, evidently. See you in 2 and 2. Grab your snacks and a beverage. You're going to need it.
I don't dance, I just float. Float, float, float. I don't dance, I just float. Float, 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 float. I just float. I'm light as a feather, I'm light as a feather. Yeah, baby, I float. It's hard to look at my resume and not find a reason to toast. She throwing that thing in a circle, making it viral. I might just elope. Say, listen.
So much news right now, I don't even know where to start.
So a group of investors led by Fortress Investment Group are set to acquire Vice out of bankruptcy.
Interesting.
FTC sues Amazon for trapping people in Prime subscriptions.
Thanks, Jack.
Dave, down here, Team Orca has struck again, this time off the coast of Scotland, where they batted around a 72-year-old man's yacht.
LED lights are causing problems in the forest.
Wow, thanks everyone.
Now, from the story that, as many are saying, just keeps on storying, we've got some additional information regarding Oceangate. Just like last night, I'm going to break these down into categories, and we're going to tackle them category by category, and then we're going to close out the night with the Russian coup. So here we go.
Someone said this sounds like the description of a slave ship, and now I can't
and it's the most terrifying thing you will have heard today. Imagine being trapped in something the size of a minivan, pitch black, the air is thick because you and 4 others have been breathing the same air for hours. You're trapped under 15,000 feet of water, it's cold because there is no power, you can't get up and move around, and even if you could it would just use more oxygen. There's no contact with the outside. Every now and again you hear the creaking of the hull caused by the tremendous pressure. You have limited food and water, the air reeks of BO. Yeah, the submarine pilot reassures you that everything is going to be okay, and just to sit tight, but the look on their face whenever light is available lets you know they are just as terrified. Every so often the pilot taps on the hull with a hammer. He's sending out Morse code, hoping someone picks it up on sonar. He doesn't realize nobody will hear. You feel the terror rising in you as you realize that this is probably it. Limited air, limited space, limited water, limited food, and absolutely zero chance of escape. Your fate depends on the outside world, and it is obvious they don't know where you are.
How if poetic justice was a pivotal historical moment, that billionaires who capitalize off the backs and receive generational wealth off the backs of Black people had the full slave ship experience in a matter of hours. But let's get into more about this vessel.
All right. This information comes from a former nuclear submarine officer. When a submarine hull collapses, it moves inward at about 1,500 miles per hour. That's 2,200 feet per second. The time required for complete collapse is 2,200 seconds, about 1 millisecond. A human brain responds instinctually to stimulus at about 25 milliseconds. The human rationale response, which is sense, reason, and act, is at best 150 milliseconds. The air inside a sub has a fairly high concentration of hydrocarbon vapors. When the hull collapses, it behaves like a very large piston on a very large diesel engine. The air auto-ignites and an explosion follows the initial rapid implosion. Large blobs of fat that would be humans incinerate and are turned to ash and dust quicker than you can blink your eye. The people who died on this expedition to ogle the gravesite of thousands of poor people didn't even know that they died when it happened. According to the UN World Food Program, every year more than 3 million children die from hunger-related causes. Those 3 million children suffer and die at a preventable cause. Why do I have absolutely zero sympathy for any of these people that died in this submersible to go down to see the Titanic? Because any one of them had enough resources to solve that problem and chose not to. Every billionaire has a ridiculous amount of resources that could solve a majority of the problems that face people around the globe. And every single day they wake up, they choose not to do it. They have enough resources to write a check and fix that problem. Instead, they'll start a charitable foundation and make you send money to them so that they can then send money to solve this problem. So when a billionaire dies in a tragic way, I actually don't give a fuck. The only one that I might feel any kind of sympathy for is the 17-year-old who really didn't want to go, but his dad kind of forced him into it because it was his Father's Day present. As for the rest of them, and I'm talking all billionaires, there is no ethical way that you can become a billionaire. The accumulation of that much wealth is always at the expense of other people working for your wealth. People that are billionaires have the ability to solve a majority of the world's problems right now. But they don't, and you all want me to feel bad for them when they die doing something stupid. Fuck that.
I have nothing more to add. But I do want to say this. James Cameron, the director of Titanic, who very notably had a vessel go down and take all these pictures, and they have all these renderings so that you can have a virtual experience at the Titanic. Yeah, they could have saved all this money in death. I want you to hear his stance on this.
Well, I've been down there many times. I know the wreck site very well, as does my friend Bob Ballard. I've made 33 dives. I actually calculated that I've spent more time on the ship than the captain did back in the day. And of course, as a submersible designer myself, I designed and built a sub to go to the deepest place in the ocean, 3 times deeper than Titanic. So I understand the engineering problems associated with building this type of vehicle and all the safety protocols that you have to go through. And I think that what Bob said, because I was watching, is absolutely critical for people to really get the take-home message from this, from our effort here, is deep submergence diving is a mature art. From the early 60s, where there were a few accidents, nobody was killed in the deep submergence, until now, is more time than between Kitty Hawk and the flight of the first 747. So if we haven't improved over that period of time, we have improved drastically over that period of time, and the certification protocols that all other deep submergence vehicles, except this one, that carry passengers, especially paying passengers, all over the world in tropical waters, deep coral reefs, other wreck sites, and so on. The safety record is the gold standard. Absolutely. Not only no fatalities, but no major incidents requiring all of these assets to converge to a site. Of course, that's the nightmare that we've all lived with, since all of us entered this field of deep exploration. We live with it in the back of our minds. But because implosion, as Bob described it, such a violent event, is first and foremost in our minds. The pressure boundary, which is what they call the hull of the sub, that the people go inside, is obviously first and foremost in our minds as engineers. And we spend so much time and energy on that. And we use all the computerized tools available today, finite element analysis. We worked on our sphere for our Deep vehicle that went to the Challenger Deep for over 3 years, just in the computer, before we even made the thing. And then, of course, we pressure tested it over and over and over, and so on. So, this is a mature art, and many people in the community were very concerned about this sub, and a number of the top players in the deep submergence engineering community even wrote letters to the company saying that what they were doing was too experimental to carry passengers and that needed to be certified and so on. So I'm struck by the similarity of the Titanic disaster itself, where the captain was repeatedly warned about ice ahead of his ship, and yet he steamed at full speed into an ice field on a moonless night, and many people died as a result. And for a very similar tragedy where warnings went unheeded to take place at the same exact site, with all the diving that's going on all around the world, I think is just astonishing. It's really quite surreal. And of course, P.H. Nargeolet, the French legendary submersible dive pilot, a friend of mine. It's a very small community. I've known PH for 25 years. For him to have died tragically in this way is almost impossible for me to process.
According to James Cameron, the people on the sub were aware what was about to happen. He gave an interview, and in that interview, James said that they dropped the ballast and were attempting to ascend, so they knew something was wrong. I quickly did research to verify this, and here's what I found. The Titan had emergency measures for ascending. We know that after 24 hours, it would immediately resurface. That's because you could drop weights and emergency ballast in the form of sandbags and pipes. Sandbags, as well as the heavy pipes that they can also drop, were carried on this landing fairing. The landing fairing was the legs. This is where it gets really fucked up. Fairing was found, but it was found a few hundred feet away from the Titanic. This indicates to us that the sandbags and the pipes were dropped so that they could start their ascent. The location of the fairing was found several feet away from the other parts. Okay, so they were trying to ascend. Why does this matter? Why does it matter that they dropped two things? Well, James said that the Oceangate sub had sensors on it that gives them a warning when there's something that's about to happen, like damage to the structural integrity of the hull. He said it means they probably had a warning that their hull was starting to delaminate, starting to crack. We understand from inside the community that they had dropped their ascent weights and they were coming up trying to manage an emergency. This means that the sensor went off, so the CEO did what he's supposed to do and he dropped those sandbags, assuming he can see the pressure gauge or something on those monitors, right? Like, he has to be able to see something about the sub to know what was happening to it. Why do we need to ascend? Why is the sensor going off? He could probably see that pressure gauge. He realized they weren't ascending fast enough, so he also jettisoned off the entire bottom layer of the ship that was holding the sandbags, the fairing. He realized, oh God, we're going to implode because we're not ascending fast enough. The pressure gauge was probably just going into that scary danger zone, if it wasn't already there. So what made him drop the fairing as well, and not just the sandbags? Was it just the pressure gauge freaking him out, or was there a giant dent in the top of the structure right before implosion, and letting go of that fairing was the last thing the CEO ever did? I know we shouldn't speculate. We'll really never know if they were aware, but here's my theory. If anyone was aware of what was about to happen, it was the CEO. His job is to keep everyone else calm, so he probably said, all right, this thing is going off because there's something wrong with the ship. We're going to immediately ascend. Don't worry. But I imagine he knew then how fucked they were. To release not only the sandbags, but to panic and do a last-ditch effort by dropping the fairing. Come on, like, he realized, oh, we're not going up fast enough. Do you guys think he knew that he was helpless? And if so, do you think that he was able to keep it to himself?
He 5-minute craft a submersible and shortcut the budget when he had more than enough budget in his own bank account. No, he didn't keep it to himself. No, he panicked. He freaked out. He told everybody. My thing is, when that 19-year-old looked over at his daddy like, yeah, happy fucking Father's Day. But with everything that happened, we do have to look at the legality of it all. So, who better to explain it than an attorney?
Now that we know that the Oceangate Titan submersible was tragically destroyed and everybody presumed dead, we can now get into the legal issues, and let's do that. Let's look at the Oceangate Waiver of Liability form. Here it is from the watermark. You can tell I got this from TMZ. It is the Oceangate Expeditions Release of Liability Agreement. The first page basically tells you all of the terrible things that can happen to you, up to and including death, which is what in fact happened. The highlighted language on the second page is where we get to the guts of the release. In the middle paragraph, it says that the person signing hereby releases, waives, and forever discharges Oceangate Expeditions and its owner from all damages resulting on account of injury to myself or my property, or resulting in my death, arising out of, or in any way connected with my participation in the operation, including travel to and from the operation site. That's decent language. The person signing is absolving Oceangate of any of those things. But let's look at the very next paragraph. It says I assume full responsibility for the risk of bodily injury, disability, death, and property damage due to the negligence of any released party while involved in the operation. That's interesting, and they might have considered not including that language. Why? Because there is a difference between negligence and gross negligence. Negligence is just, you screwed up. You made a mistake, there was an accident, whatever. Gross negligence is you proceeded knowing that there was an unusual risk and you ignored it. For example, people told you that the materials should be tested for their strength after each dive, and you didn't. You ignored that. People told you that there were design flaws with the submersible, and you ignored them. You decided to go forward anyway. That could be considered gross negligence, and the heirs of the people could say, well, they didn't waive gross negligence, they only waived negligence. On the third page, the document purports to be governed by the laws of the Bahamas. Now, I have no idea what the laws of the Bahamas are. Could a court in the United States say that that does not apply and that instead some state law applies? Yes, they could. Generally, there has to be some connection to the place of the law that is chosen, in this case, the Bahamas. Was there? I don't know. Was anybody ever in the Bahamas? Was anybody a citizen of the Bahamas? The company apparently was in the Bahamas, but a United States court could say, that doesn't work. You can't choose that law because of conflicts of laws principles. It would be typical in a clause like that to say, it's the law of the Bahamas without regard to conflicts of laws principles. Now a state could say, well, it says Bahamas, but based on conflicts of laws, we're not going to allow it to be the Bahamas because there's no contacts there. It is therefore possible that lawsuits will not be brought in the Bahamas, but somewhere else where everybody actually had a real connection and that might have law favorable to the decedents. In any event, you can't expect lawsuits and you can't expect Oceangate to simply go bankrupt.
And plausibly the family. But you also have to look at, will insurance payout? Let's take a look.
This is a very good question. Do you think their life insurance companies are going to pay out? This is regarding those who perished in the submarine by the Titanic. And the simple answer is probably not, but that all is depending on the policies that they have and the clause that that policy had. And I know on my page I'm like singing, dancing, goofing off, talking about pop culture, but I am actually licensed by the New York State Department of Financial Services. And I got a license in life insurance, so I know what I'm talking about. So there are 5 things that are not covered by life insurance, and that's 1, pre-existing conditions, 2, accidents that occur while under the influence, drugs, alcohol. 3, suicide. 4, criminal activity. And 5, death due to high-risk activity. For example, skydiving. And for this example, signing a waiver that actually has the word death in it multiple times and going into the pits of the ocean. So, in general, according to these rules, yeah, the insurance companies are not liable. And due to at least one of the billionaires, like, you know, his lifestyle and the fact that he does go out and explore, he probably doesn't have a life insurance policy. He's a billionaire. He has enough capital. When I talk to my clients, like, hey, you need to know the exact policy that you have. And depending on the lifestyle that you have, like if you all of a sudden become an alcoholic or whatever the case may be, you need to look into your policy to see if they have like special clauses that will still insure you. These billionaires have multiple financial vehicles that help keep their estate insured, and they're probably not relying on an insurance policy in itself, which is why the reason why the rest of us regular folk need insurance, because we don't have the capital. But that doesn't mean you gotta spend an arm and a leg on insurance. And a lot of y'all probably got insurance that got the cash value, and y'all screaming, oh, but you got cash value, or this policy has cash value. So if they did have a cash value insurance plan, cash value is not paid to beneficiaries. So when you pass away, cash value typically reverts to the life insurance company. Your beneficiaries receive the policy's death benefit amount minus any loans and withdrawals of cash value you made. And the cash value is your actual money that you won't get back if you died in those types of situations. So I would use this time to look into your policies if you have one. If you have questions, feel free to ask me. But in the meantime, I'll be making music.
So since so many people were asking online about the insurance, yeah, most people at that level, they don't have insurance. They have the money to pay for long-time health care, the funeral, funeral and burial costs and all that stuff. And usually they just burn up mama, sit her up on the mantelpiece and forget about her. And then a few generations down the line, somebody sells it to an auction because of the Tiffany's urn that she's in. But one more update on the billionaire's stepson. And he is the rotten peach that just won't get thrown away.
Getting more feedback about this loser. You're absolutely right. I should not be laughing. This is really serious. And this guy is getting clout off of this whole situation. Off of something we really should not be blowing up to the proportion that we are in the first place. Like, bro is literally a menace to society.
Yeah, the same stepfather that he couldn't sit and mourn about, and that even after finding out that he wanted to argue with Cardi B for clout and everything else, is a stalker, has threatened women, has threatened to shoot people. Yeah. But as I stated at the beginning, evidently there is a coup underway or getting started in Russia. Get comfortable. Want to run through all of the information that is available thus far.
Reports of a potential military coup is beginning in Russia. Russia has activated plans.
Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but apparently something is happening in Russia. A couple of people have commented on it on TikTok. The Guardian's backed it up. It's the head of the Wagner Group, the guy with a 28,000 strong mini army. He lost 2,000 of his men to the Russians, and he's not happy about it. So Moscow's locking down, apparently. Reuters are covering it as well. They seem to think there's some credibility to it, as is the BBC. The BBC are stating that the head of the Wagner Group has got it in for Vlad. That's not necessarily good news, because he makes Vladimir Putin look a little bit soft and fluffy. This guy's nuts. Anyway.
As reports of a potential military coup is beginning in Russia, Russia has activated Plan Fortress. This plan is an emergency plan that has been activated in multiple cities across the country, including Moscow, and brings all military forces and paramilitary forces under the control of the government to protect the city from any external threat. Employees are in alert mode. Absolute madness is ongoing inside Russia right now, and I will provide you updates as we learn more, so be sure to follow along if you don't. Here's everything you need to know about the military coup in Russia in under 60 seconds. The coup is being led by the head of the Wagner Group, a mercenary group hired by Russia to attack Ukraine. In recent weeks, the head of the Wagner Group has attacked Vladimir Putin and the Ministry of Defense for not doing enough in Ukraine. A few hours ago, the head of the Wagner Group announced that Russia's Ministry of Defense attacked Wagner Group positions. He then vowed revenge. Since then, Wagner fighters have left their positions in eastern Ukraine and are marching towards Moscow. Moscow tonight is on high alert. The city has launched Operation Fortress or Operation Citadel. Many roads are blocked. High-ranking generals in Russia have called on Wagner forces to arrest their own leader and to stop marching. The United States is aware of the situation, and sources have acknowledged that the situation is very serious. Meanwhile, Ukraine has launched new counteroffensives on the front lines. Follow along for more.
The Russian Civil War might have just started. It's very difficult to tell. Some people are saying it's the beginning of a civil war. Some people are saying it's just a simple coup. Some people are saying the entire thing's fake. It's incredibly difficult to tell. It is between a mercenary group called Wagner that President Putin of Russia hired to fight in Ukraine and the Russian Ministry of Defense, basically the Russian army that is also in Ukraine. There is accusations going back and forth. I'm going to try to summarize it for you as such. Over the last year, the Wagner mercenary group in Ukraine has been taking a lot of the fighting, and they've suffered heavy casualties. Over this last year, the leader of the Russian mercenary group, his name is Prigozhin, has regularly gone on social media and shit-talked the Russian military. He said repeatedly that the Russians would have won in Ukraine much earlier if it wasn't for the Ministry of Defense. If they had given him more weapons, if they had given him more ammo, if they had actually stopped fleeing from things all the time. He just kept shit-talking the Ministry of Defense. The part that has been shocking about that is that Prigozhin was not then thrown out of a window Moscow style. That's usually what happens when you talk shit on Putin and Russian generals, but that hasn't happened. This morning, Prigozhin went on social media and had a long rant. During that rant, he stated that the entire Russian justification for the war in Ukraine was a lie created by Russian generals who just wanted more medals. They wanted more money, better titles, so they could get nicer houses. That's what he said. And a few hours after that, a Russian mercenary training camp exploded. The Russian mercenaries claim that it was not blown up by the Ukrainians. They said it didn't come from the west. They said it was missiles from the east, from the direction of the Russian forces. A few hours after that, Prigozhin, the leader of the mercenaries, declared that he was going to be on a march for justice and that starting tonight he was taking 25,000 troops into Moscow. He was going to march them in Russia and go directly to the Ministry of Defense and remove the evil leaders that have installed themselves in the Russian Defense Ministry. Since that moment, the Russian Justice Department, or their version, Ministry of Justice, they have stated that they have opened an investigation into mutiny and insurrection for Prigozhin and the other leaders of the Wagner mercenary group. We're now seeing videos of military equipment moving into defensive positions around Moscow. And there's also checkpoints going up on highways between the Ukrainian border and Moscow. All of this is very fluid, and it's also very difficult to confirm. The reason for that is because the internet has changed drastically in the last 8 months since Elon Musk bought Twitter. And as every tech bro who owns a major social media site has decided that verification doesn't matter, but money does. It is hard to go to find the trusted sources to be able to follow these things through. Everything is in flux. Everything. I am going to journalists whose reporting I have trusted in the past to find out this information. I am not 100% certain of where they get that information. I will try to put in updates as I can, This is insane. I quit smoking 22 days ago. And now possibly the Russian Civil War just kicked off.
Huge news right now about the Russian coup. According to the head of the Wagner Group, Wagner forces have officially entered Russia, and they are on their way to Moscow to take out members of the Ministry of Defense. As soon as we have confirmation of this, I will let you know, so be sure to follow along for more. But this situation is very real and very bad for leaders in Russia. Here's the latest update about the coup in Russia tonight. Law enforcement has reportedly begun to set up checkpoints and has checked any vehicles, specifically trucks, that enter the Russian capital of Moscow or the administrative district of the city. Meanwhile, Yevgeny Prigozhin has announced that he will be coming for Minister Shoigu, the defense minister of Russia, as well as General Gerasimov, who's one of the head generals of the Russian army. President Biden has been briefed on this attempted coup, and it looks like it's a very real and serious situation. As always, as we have more, I will update you, so follow along if you don't.
Okay, as I have the news going in the background and I'm kind of flipping back and forth between a couple of different stations, right now, looks like all sides are denying that a coup is going on, but it is reported that there are tanks in the street. Also, Ukraine is kind of tweeting out like, we're watching. We are watching, like what's going to go down. But the head of the Wagner Group, yeah, he's pretty horrible. He is pretty horrible. When Putin is the lesser, that's bad. That is bad. And you also have to keep in mind, should this coup take place, I know a lot of, especially conservatives, and even some on the left that have not paid attention to anything political until Trump jumped into the arena. Once again, gas prices have nothing to do with any administration, but gas prices will go up by the barrel, just like at the beginning of the Ukrainian-Russian war. Should this become a full-blown coup? Now, I'm not going to say I blame anybody. I know they done had enough of Putin shit from the rooter to the tutor. But there's been enough death and destruction over there, and we really do not need the head of the Wagner Group taking control. But Ron DeSantis, please pay close attention. This is what happens when you have a privatized army at your disposal on top of your nation's military. The privatized army doesn't have any allegiance to you. They have an allegiance to a paycheck. And they don't want their resume messed up. But as always, thank you for joining me here for Conversations with Taz. Make sure you check out the links in the description of this video. And if you liked it and you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. And please share with your friends and family. And when you come back to watch again, bring someone with you. I will see you all on Sunday. And for now, learn about Pumpkin villages.
Okay, so I was just learning about how apparently there are all kinds of fake towns across the world. It's called a Potemkin village. You see how this is just being held up by beams? It's basically just a fake town in a city that is designed to deceive people into believing that the city is doing better than it really is. Like, this is in Russia, and abandoned buildings just get a slab of new paint, so that way if you're just crossing by on a train, you think that the town is doing better than it really is. But sometimes they're built to serve a completely different purpose. Like, there's a Potemkin village in North Korea that directly faces South Korea. It's an entirely fake town with clean streets, apartment complexes, and even working electricity. But the entire town is completely fake. This entire neighborhood exists literally just to lure people in from South Korea into the North Korean dictatorship. And then I learned about this fake town called Doomtown that existed in the 50s in Nevada. Scientists wanted to see what would happen to a real town if an atomic bomb were to be dropped in it. And so they created the fake town of Doomtown to find out. They built real houses, placed real furniture, and staged mannequins, and then tested out multiple atomic bombs to see what would happen to these mannequins. Spoiler alert, none of the mannequins survived. But isn't this insane?